So hello everyone, I welcome you all to the Concept YouTube channel. So today's topics are, first topic is CIC on electoral bond, second is climate change policy, change in the climate change policy that is needed, tragedy of conservation, this is the third topic. Next is global angle to farmer protest, supply chain resilience initiative, digital ocean. Then in the end I will give you the main question. So this topic is related with polity, this is with environment, this again with environment section, GS paper 3. This can be asked under economy section and agriculture sector section. This topic is related with international relation, this topic is related with IT. In example category also you can put it, and in the end I will give you the mains question. So this session is presented by me. My name is Saurabh Pandey. If you are preparing for UPSC examination, you can join Unacademy. Many of the batch courses have been launched, and these batch courses are related with prelims 2021. If you're preparing for 2022, 2023, there are many batch courses. In addition, there are many individual courses by top educators. Each courses you can access in addition to the batch courses. What you have to do, you have to take the subscription of Unacademy. You need to visit unacademy.com or Unacademy learning app. This option is again very important. This option is launched by me. It is starting from January 5. The classes will be held at 9:30 p.m. Please don't miss this course. This will help you to complete the optional. Notes will be given in the class itself. This will also open an opportunity for you for Indian Forest Service as well. Use the code SPLIVE. What you have to do, you have to visit unacademy.com, or you can download Unacademy learning app. Then you have to select UPSC CSC. Then you need to take subscription of optional for 1 year or 2 years, and then you can complete your optional. The course will be again taken by me. To download the PDF of this session, you have to visit SP Current Affairs. This is the Telegram channel, and to post your answer, you have to post your answer by 5:30 p.m. in this Telegram channel, that is Daily Dose with S. Pandey. The name of the student who write the best answer, again it will be announced in the session at 10 p.m. in Unacademy. You can follow me on unacademy.com/@SPLive. So let's start the first topic. The first topic is the climate policy needs new ideas. Again, a very important topic. We are aware about that many of the reports these reports have highlighted that the average temperature of Earth is increasing. You have this case of global warming, and because of the global warming, what is happening? Climate change is taking place. So the major challenge is to arrest and reverse this climate change, and it can only be done if we are focusing on global governance, in which the governments are participating, they are coordinating, they are collaborating to take certain steps which reduces carbon emissions, which again are responsible for, like carbon emission is responsible for the climate change and global warming. So 2021, if we talk about 2021, we can have new global climate policy, and in this India can play a very important role, because in case of India, India is such a major economy which will be able to meet its Paris Agreement target for 2030. So it is said by a few years we will be able to meet this target. Per capita emission is around 1/3 of the global average, so it reflects that India is taking certain steps in order to reduce the emission. Next part is about the urbanized world. In present context, if we talk about the present context, due to the messy urbanization and unplanned growth, the emission is continuously increasing. There is also a case of development. When you talk about the development at the individual level also, the individual development is also determined by the economic growth. Because of the economic empowerment, every individual wants to have a good house, roads, means access to road. There are certain physical infrastructure which is required. and because of the paying capacity, due to increase in the paying capacity of the individual, demand for such infrastructure is continuously increasing. So the challenge in front of the government is to provide certain infrastructure, and to provide such infrastructure many things are done, like forests are cleared, there is an encroachment of wetlands, which again result into reduction in the carbon sequestration, which will result into further what we call it as increase in the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, which will further result into what we call it as climate change. So the point also been highlighted that the saturation level of infrastructure with consumption, when you talk about the cities, the well-being in cities is reflected in saturation level of infrastructure with consumption, not production. So when you talk about the infrastructure demand in the cities, the demand is continuously in certain areas it is increasing, in certain areas the demand has reached to a saturation level, but still because of increase in income of individual, slowly the income is increasing, and every individual wants to create his wants to access every kind of infrastructure, which has resulted into high urban per capita emission. Next is related with inequity. This is again a very important point. United Nations in its report has also highlighted that the richest 1% of the global population emits more than 2 times of the emission of the bottom 50%. Now this point is again very important, because 1% richest population is responsible for maximum emission. So there is need to change the behavior and the attitude of such a population, the global population, which we can say which stays in the developed world, and which is again responsible for maximum emission. So there is need to change certain attitude and behavior. There is need to bring up the transformational social goals, material bonding boundaries. It means, like for example, if you talk about the individual, or we talk about international level, or when you talk about the society itself, there is need to change their thinking process. There is need to acknowledge the fact that without changing the social goals, or without changing the approach and thinking that materialistic development is the real development, we need to change this materialistic approach. If you are not changing the materialistic approach in the individual level, the approach towards economic growth that we are continuing, it will further prevail, which is again not sustainable. This will result into unsustainable use of the natural resources, and because of the unsustainable use of natural resources, we cannot achieve what we call it as a sustainable development. And this is again very important, that in order to achieve the sustainable development, we require a societal transformation. Next part is related with the carbon neutrality. When you talk about the carbon neutrality, the approach that we follow, we think that if you are increasing the emission, this emission can be reduced by increasing the absorption capacity. This is the basic idea behind the carbon neutrality, that you are not focusing to reduce the emission, but you are saying we need to increase the absorption capacity. As a result, the carbon level that is there in the atmosphere, it will not either increase or neither it will decrease. The focus should be in reality, it should be to reduce the emission, and at the same point of time, the absorption capacity can also be improved. We are focusing on industrialization and urbanization. Industrialization and urbanization is not the problem per se, but the kind of development or the kind of approach that we are following in these two approaches, either for industrialization or urbanization, are actually not sustainable. For example, commodity prices low, over resource intensive, defining progress as a material abundance, and we think that if you develop the technology, then this technology will help to solve the ecological problem. Now these are the basic problems related with the present industrialization and urbanization. There is also a thinking that if if world poor develops, it means their demand for the resources will increase. So if their demand for resources will increase, and there is unsustainable use of natural resources which will further impact the planet, it can endanger the planet. This thinking is completely wrong. It is said that the rising prosperity of the world poor does not endanger the planet. It does not endanger the planet. The need is to change the wasteful behavior. What is required is to change the wasteful behavior. The wasteful behavior need to be changed, to be altered, and this is the required. For example, if 1% of the richest population is responsible 2 times more emission by the 50%, so what is required is to limit the wasteful behavior. There are many examples like meat industry. If you talk about, so the India needs just 4 kg of meat a year. European Union, it is around 65 kg. America, it is around 100 kg. Even when you talk about average American household waste nearly 1/3 of its food. So these are the examples, certain examples which quotes the wasteful behavior of certain population living in developed world. We have the case of increase in transport emission and increased use of coal to generate energy. This is also a factor responsible for increase in carbon emission. Next is related with the tragedy of conservation. This argument which is there in this article can be used in writing essay or in GS paper 3. So the argument given in this article can be used under environment section. So what is the basic argument behind this article is one is protection of biodiversity. For example, if an area is declared as a World Heritage Site, so steps will be taken to protect the biodiversity. The second point is related with the protection of rights given to the people, indigenous people living in that area, living in that forest area. So for example, in 2012, 39 areas covering national park, wildlife sanctuary, reserve forest in Western Ghats, they were declared as World Heritage Site by UNESCO. They have been declared as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. Against this background, you have this act called Forest Right Act in 2006, Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People in 2007 by the United Nations. So the focus in this case is again to protect the rights of indigenous people living in that area. But once the area is declared as World Heritage Site, then certain steps are taken to protect the biodiversity, or the ecological balance need to be maintained. So such steps are taken to maintain the equilibrium of ecological maintain the equilibrium exist in that area. So such approach, sometimes the more focus on biodiversity protection, somehow it comes in counter to the rights enshrined in these acts, and it adds uncertainty about their future. They are not very much convinced about the approach that they have to follow in future. For example, in Karnataka, of 6.95% of tribal population living in Karnataka, out of which 44.2% population lives in Western Ghats. So there is always a conflict between the conservationist or environmentalist and the indigenous people living in that area. So environmentalists, they try to protect the biodiversity, and the indigenous peoples, they try to focus on protection of their rights. So there is a chance of conflict in both the cases. Next is related with the broken bond of democracy. This topic is again a very important topic related with polity section. For this, you need to understand a very small point related with electoral bond. This is again a very important topic related with polity section. Electoral bond. Okay, electoral bond. So we have to understand this. So what is electoral bond? For example, if you want to donate 10,000 rupees to a political party, so what you have to do, you have to go to SBI. You need to buy electoral bond, and you can buy that electoral bond. You can give to that political party. That political party will go to the bank, submit that bond, and after submitting that bond, a particular amount, means 10,000 rupees, will be deposited to that political party bank account. This bank account is actually approved by by the Election Commission of India. Now, this is the basic mechanism of the electoral bond that is being followed. Now, allegation is made that because of this process, the person who is buying the bond, his identity is not revealed, and there is a possibility of that somehow the black money can be used to finance a political party because the identity is not revealed. There is another argument that if the identity of a person is revealed, suppose a corporate sector it wants to donate 10 crore rupees to a political party. So if the identity is revealed of that corporate sector, there is a possibility that in future, if that particular political party is not in power, so in future there can be a case where that corporate sector is harassed by that party which came in power. So there is a need to protect their identity. At least there is need to ensure that their identity is not revealed. So in this context, there is a rule that the person who is buying the electoral bond, their identity will not be revealed by the SBI. Under this context, Central Information Commission recently it has announced that the electoral bond scheme of 2018. Under this scheme, if a person has bought electoral bond, then his or her identity should not be revealed. SBI has took the step. It has highlighted that it has this responsibility, what we call it as it has this responsibility under fiduciary capacity. It means fiduciary capacity. It simply means that it is the responsibility of the SBI to protect the identity of that person, because as per the law the identity cannot be revealed, and it is again the responsibility of SBI that such identity or the identity of such person who buy electoral bond, that is not revealed. Now if there is a case that many of RTI is filed in SBI, so SBI, by using Section 8 of RTI Act, it has refused to disclose the information related to the person. Next is it has also been highlighted that there was no public interest involved in the application. This is again one point. Another is related with the fiduciary capacity. So next point is again that has been put against the argument made by the State Bank of India. It is related with the People Union for Civil Liberty versus Union of India case 2003, in which Honorable Supreme Court has held that the freedom of speech and expression also contained the fundamental rights of a voter to secure information about the candidate who are contesting the election. So this freedom of speech and expression can be any means and mechanism under which you are expressing yourself. Like for example, if you are voting, so to make a decision related to voting, whom to vote, whom not to vote, there is need for information such as who finances the candidate, who financed that political party, who bear the expenses of the political party or the candidate. Such information need to be given to the voter. If such information is not given to the voter, it will be against the public interest. So the point made by the SBI that such application, RTI application filed in SBI, in which there was a demand that the identity of that person who buy the electoral bond need to be revealed, and SBI stated that SBI actually refused to entertain such application. And it stated that the application involves no public interest. So in this context, if you'll see, the public interest can be linked with this argument that in People Union for Civil Liberty versus Union of India 2003 case, Honorable Court has focused that voter need to be given certain information, maybe related with the candidate or candidate expenses or the political parties whom he wants to vote. And this is a part of a freedom of speech and expression, and it is a kind of a fundamental right. So all these points have been made. Next is related with the global angle to the farmer protest. This is again a very important topic, so we will discuss. This topic is related with economy section, and also agriculture section, you can include it. Many of the arguments related with the farmer protest we have discussed in detail. Now here the basic argument is related with the international aspect of these protests. The point is, take the example, if you talk about countries like USA or countries like EU. Now because of the type of climate that is there in these countries, they cannot grow all the crops. There is a less possibility of agricultural diversification in these countries. So agriculture diversification means many crops they can grow, that is not possible. So they mainly grow food grains, and the amount of food grains grown by these country actually exceeds the demand in their country. So they want other countries to buy their food grains. They tried to convince many of the countries like Philippines or many of the African countries. They have convinced that we will provide you the food grains at a lower price. Food grains will be provided by many of the companies of USA and European Unions to the developing countries, and they said ki we will provide you the food grains and you can export us some other things which is not grown in our country. I mean, in USA, European Union countries, certain agriculture commodities, if it is not grown, that can be imported from the other developing countries. So many of the countries, they have believed, they thought ki we should not waste our time and energy or space in growing food grains. Rather, they tried to grow such crops which is required by these United States, Canada, European Union. Now the problem arises when these countries they took decision. As per the decision, the food grain grown by these countries actually diverted for the production of ethanol. So suddenly what happened? They have diverted the food grains, surplus food grain, for the production of ethanol. So the food grain which was supposed to be exported to the developing countries, it was diverted for the production of ethanol. Now this has resulted into food scarcity in many of these developing countries. In many of the countries there were cases of food riots. So if such approach we will follow, for example, if we reduces our dependency, or if you increases our dependency or reduces our self-reliance. Presently what happens, like we pay MSP and we procure food grains from many of the farmers, and we have a huge stock which can be used in case of emergency. And if our thinking changes and we think and we follow the approach that there is no need to carry out such procurement or to carry out the storage, rather it will be better that if we can import food grains from USA, Canada or European Union. The problem which existed earlier, which has been faced by many of the developing countries, similar problem we can also face, but as we are such a big country with 130 crore people, in our case the problem will be much higher. So we need to work in such a manner that our self-reliance need to be maintained. Like for example, you can take the case Philippines or Botswana. They faced many problems. There were cases of food riots because of the change in approach followed by many of these companies. Either you can talk about the USA, Canada or European Union. In our country, what we require to change the approach. We need to change agriculture practices, the kind of technique and technology that we follow to do the agriculture practices. So what we can do is we can follow certain sophisticated means and mechanism or the process for growing the crops, like system of rice intensification, or there are many types of farming exist which we can follow, which will help us to improve our agricultural needs also, and it can also increase agriculture productivity also. Next is a very important topic, resilient supply chain as a pandemic lesson. Now when you talk about the resilient supply chain as a pandemic lesson, this is again a very important topic, and it can be asked under international relation also. To understand this, understand the context, like in case of pandemic, we can talk about this pandemic. In pandemic, many countries, they have realized that increase in dependency, if there is increase in dependency on a particular country, for example in case of India, our dependency on China related with pharma is very high. For example, we import API which is used to make a medicine from China. So in case of pandemic, such dependency means every country, either in automobile sector, electronic sector, is highly dependent on China. Sometimes what happens, China can use this dependency to exploit the country. It can use it as a weaponization of trade and technology. It means that China will try to establish its interest. It will take every step to establish its interest. It will take certain steps so that it can establish its interest. We can call it as a weaponization of the supply chain, and it has been done in many cases. In case of Japan, we will discuss further. So this approach of weaponization of trade or weaponization of supply chains need to be limited, and for this many of the initiative has been launched by country like India, Australia, Japan. Also we are focusing towards Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliant. So sustainability of supply chains need to be maintained, and dependency need to be reduced. Disruption need to be avoided in order to improve the global economy. Disruption in the supply chain can be natural or man-made, like in Japan case, greater earthquake in 2011, tsunami was the case. So such natural causes can be there, which are responsible for disruption in the supply chain. There is also possibility the approach that is followed by China, we can call it as a part of a supply chain politics. Like in 2010, Japan has detained a Chinese fishing trawler. As a result, Chinese government it cut down export of rare earth metals to Japan, which impacted many of the industries of Japan. Even in case of novel coronavirus pandemic, many of these supply chain which emanate from China, they have been disrupted. So all these are the cases of what we call it as the greater weaponization of trade and technology. The initiative called as India, Japan, Australia, they have carried out this initiative, which is called as Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, and the focus is on automobile and parts, petroleum, steel, textile, financial services, IT sector. These are different sectors. These are the different sectors we can call it, and these different sectors which are mentioned here, these are the different sectors in which if there is a case of a disruption of supply chain, it can be avoided. These countries have cooperate and coordinate to avoid the disruption in these areas. Even in case of Australia, for example, take the case of Australia. Australia also faces many dilemma. It faces dilemma. The major dilemma is related with China. For example, in case of China, to China it exports grain, beef, wine, coal. All these things are exported. China is coming close to Australia near Kiribati Island, which is again a very strategically located island near to Australia. So one point is related with the strategic interest. If China is trying to gain the strategic advantage, it is trying to occupy islands like Kiribati, which is near to Australia. So China is trying to have strategic advantage in case of Australia. This is one point. Second point is related with the economic interest. So if because of any of the step taken by the Australia, if somehow it impacts the mindset of China, there can be a possibility that China may cut export from export from China, from Australia, which may again further affect the Australian economy. In case of India also, 27% of its requirement of automotive part of China, automotive part comes from China. So this is required that we need to increase our self-reliance. Even in case of during pandemic, there was certain shortage of braking components, electrical component. There was certain shortage of these things. So there is need to take steps so that disruption of supply chain is avoided. India's electronic industry worth about $120 billion in 2018-19, forecast to grow $400 billion by 2025. Today, India is seeking to enhance its presence substantially in global supply chain by attracting investment in semiconductor component. So we are focusing more on Atmanirbhar Bharat, so that we can increase our reliance, self-reliance, and this disruption of supply chain can be avoided, and we can grow further in India's electronic industry. So the next topic is related with DigitalOcean. So we need to know what is actually DigitalOcean. So it has been launched by Ministry of Science and Technology. DigitalOcean platform of Indian National Center for Oceanic Information. It is a one-stop solution for all data related. There are different data related with ocean. So the data will be provided in this platform, and it can be accessed by research institutions, operational agencies, strategic users, academic community, maritime industry. Every institution which wants to access the data related with ocean, they can access in this platform. So this is the basic thing that you need to understand. Next is related with supply chain. Is the question: supply chain resilience initiative can play an important role in limiting greater weaponization of trade and technology. You have to discuss. You have to write it within 15 marks. Like you have to write it within 1 to 50 words. Please submit your answer before 5:30 p.m. if you want your answer to be counted for today's answer writing champion. So I request each of you, don't forget to press a subscription button so that you can get the notification of all the sessions, and don't forget to press the like button. So thank you everyone. Thank you.